Welcome back guys. AMD's FSR 3.1 is now officially available in 5 Nixxes games. In this video I'll be testing all of these games on my Steam Deck running on SteamOS. FSR 3.1 includes frame generation. This technique tries to double the FPS by adding interpolated frames. It relies on optical flow technology and game data like motion vectors. This is why it cannot be implemented on a driver level basis like SteamOS FSR. For a good experience with frame generation enabled, AMD recommends a minimum of 60 FPS. This way you won't be observing a lot of frame generation related artifacts like weird outlines and ghosting around the character models. Input delay won't be an issue as well. From my own testing I can say that you can use frame generation even with games running at 30 FPS, especially if you are using a gamepad. The input delay penalty is more perceivable when using a mouse instead of a gamepad. FSR 3.1 also improves the image quality of FSR upscaler. In my previous PC video, I compared the image qualities of DLSS 3.7, XeSS 1.3 and FSR 3.1. DLSS came out on top, second position was taken by XeSS. FSR 3.1 came out to be the last. The thing is, FSR upscaler still struggles to render fine textures properly. For example, textures like power lines, fences and grills. When these textures are observed from a far off distance, they appear to be flickering. XeSS is Intel's upscaler. It works on any GPU, whether it's from Intel, Nvidia or AMD, does not matter. I'll kick things off with Spiderman Remastered. For this game, I'm using Proton version 9.0-2. Connected my Cosmic by Stellaris gamepad to deck via Bluetooth mode. Start the game. Performance tab. Overlay level set to 3. I own the LCD variant of Steam Deck. Overclocked its display from 60 to 70 Hz. Frame rate limit and refresh rate set to 70. Now guys, this is very important. For all of these Sony games, you need to enable manual GPU clock setting and set the value to 1600 MHz. Otherwise, when you enable frame generation, your GPU will be underclocked. This will cause the game to stutter a lot. And that's it. In-game settings, 800p resolution, VSync disable. Frame generation disable for the time being. Upscale method, I'll just set the upscaler to FSR 3. FSR 3.1 allows us to use different upscalers like DLSS, XeSS in conjunction with FSR frame generation. We are not forced to use FSR 3 upscaler. Upscale quality set to balance. Sharpness level set to 3. Up to you. We are done here. Apply the settings. Using the medium preset, just set motion blur strength to nil. Already done that. Start the game. There's Spidey. Here we are getting around 40 to 45 FPS. Check out the input response. This is the game running without frame generation. Good performance even without it. I'll just swing around the city. Yeah, FPS dropped down to around 40. You can see the tracks are flickering when viewed from a far off distance. I'll just switch to XeSS upscaler. Game supports version 1.3. Apply. Back to the game. The flickering has been reduced considerably. This flickering can be observed on the buildings as well. FSR upscaler still has a long way to go. Okay, now I'll enable frame generation. The magic can be enabled on the fly. Don't need to restart the game. Apply. You can see FPS increased to around 70. Can observe the added amount of smoothness. A smoothing effect has been applied. Input delay is not an issue. Jump. This guy wants to interact with us. HUD, beg your pardon, game's HUD elements are not flickering. Swing around. Okay, Spidey's shadow is flickering. You can see it on the ground. Minor graphical artifact. Just excellent performance. Good to see even Steam Deck reaping the benefits of frame generation. $60 to 70 FPS while swinging around the city. Medium preset. I'll be testing the next game. We'll be running the Epic Games version of Miles Morales. Already shown you how to install Epic Games Store on SteamOS via Steam itself. We'll drop the video link in the description. For Epic Store, I am using G Proton version 9-7 as the compatibility layer. And for running Spiderman Miles Morales, using this controller profile, Miles. There's the game. Launch. Performance tab. OLED level set to 3. Frame rate limit and refresh rate set to 70. Manual GPU clock setting enabled. Speed set to 1600 MHz. Now I'll show you the in-game settings. 800p resolution. VSync disabled. Frame generation disabled for the time being. Upscaler. FSR 3 using its balance preset. Sharpness level 3 optional. Apply. Medium preset. Motion blur and frame gain 10 set to nil. There's Miles. Now just observe the decorative lighting here on the window in the background. Just move around. They appear to be flickering. The LED lights are not blinking. I'll just switch to XeSS upscaler. Apply. Back to the game. Observe the window again and just move around. The flickering has stopped. Again, XeSS perform better than FSR upscaler when it comes to rendering the fine textures. FPS is around 40. Just swing around. Now I'll enable frame generation. Using it in conjunction with XeSS. Apply. Back to the game. FPS increased to around 70. Can observe the added amount of smoothness. Game's HUD elements are not flickering. Input response. Good to see frame generation working even with the Epic Games version of Miles. Good experience. GPU load is around 70 to 80%. This is surprising, not hitting the GPU bottleneck. FPS stays close to 60 and I am swinging around the city. I will be testing the next game. Now I will be running the Steam version of Ghost of Tsushima. For this game I am using Proton version 9.0-2 as the compatibility layer. We are in Performance tab. OLED level set to 3. Frame rate limit and refresh rate set to 70. Manual GPU clock setting enabled. Clock speed set to 1600 MHz. Showing the in-game settings. Display settings. 800p resolution. VSync disabled. Text is a bit small here. First I'll run the game using FSR 3 upscaler using its balance preset. Frame generation disabled for the time being. Don't even need to use any launch option in order to access this setting now. Graphics setting. I'm using the low preset. Motion blur then set to nil. There's Jin. I'm at Golden Temple. Lot of non-playable characters around me. FPS is close to 40. When I move the camera slowly like this, the bowstring produces a ghosting effect. It's a bit difficult to observe the effect on the small display of Steam Deck, but it's definitely present. Unfortunately, even XeSS has this ghosting effect. It's significantly reduced when using DLSS. Of course, we can't use DLSS on Steam Deck. It's limited to RTX GPUs. Just switch to XeSS. Apply. Moving the camera. Yeah, the ghosting is still present. More aggressive with XeSS. So better to stick with FSR 3 upscaler in this case. Just do that and enable frame generation. FSR 3 upscaler, frame generation on, apply. FPS increased to around 60. This area is very demanding. You'll be getting better performance in the open areas. Still the animation is looking smooth, not bad at all. Ignore the frame time graphs, not accurate at all. Just call my horse. Sora, leave the place. Give you an idea about the performance in the open areas. Game's HUD is not flickering. Input delay is not an issue. You can see FPS increased to around 70. GPU load is around 80%. You can try increasing a few settings or set the upscaler quality to quality instead of balance. Combat time. Initiate the standoff. Hold Y key, release it right before our enemy is about to land attack. Very good. Try to kill them quickly. Stagger that guy. This guy has a shield. I'll just use my kunai. Okay, I don't have. Oh my god. I was saying I don't have the kunai. I have one kunai. Don't remember the key. Yeah, 60 to 70 FPS during combat. Now I'll be testing the next game, Horizon Forbidden West. Prior to FSR 3.1, whenever I used FSR 3 mods in this game to enable frame generation, frame pacing issues used to occur. These issues are not present in the official implementation of FSR 3 frame generation. For this game, I am using G Proton version 9-7 as the compatibility layer. Steam version of the game. Performance tab. OLE level set to 3. Frame rate limit and refresh rate set to 70. Manual GPU clock setting enabled. Speed set to 1600 MHz. Display settings 800p resolution. VSync disabled. Upscaler set to FSR 3 using its performance preset. This game is very demanding on the hardware, especially the GPU. Frame generation disabled for the time being. Using the low preset. Motion blur strength set to nil. This alloy without frame generation FPS is around 25. A Cory sight is nearby. I'll be fighting against some bristlebacks. Image quality is decent. Oh my god, FPS dropped down to around 20. And this is the game running using the performance preset of FSR upscaler. I just switch to XeSS using its performance preset as well. Back to the game. FPS is within a range of 23 to 30, roughly the same performance using both FSR and XeSS upscalers. Not a big difference in the image quality. You can use whichever scaler you want in this game. I'll stick with XeSS. Now I'll enable frame generation. Poor performance without it. Frame generation on. Okay, FPS increased to around 40. Can observe the smoothing effect. Unfortunately, gameplay is still a bit choppy. Performance is really very variable. You can see FPS dropped down to around 36. Let me engage in combat. There's the bristleback. It's angry. Hit the weak spot. Need to shoot the green canister. Trying to inflict some elemental damage. I got the can. Game HUD is not flickering. Oh my god, the creature just exploded. FPS is around 40. Very choppy gameplay. Steam Deck's display does not support VRR. Yikes, 35 FPS. Took out another creature. So not the ideal experience in this game, even with frame generation enabled on Steam Deck. 35 to 40 FPS during combat. Now I'll be testing the next game. Steam version of Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart. For this game I'm using G Proton version 9-7 as the compatibility layer. Performance tab, overlay level set to 3, frame rate and refresh rate set to 70. For this game don't enable manual GPU clock setting. Auto GPU clock works fine. Display settings 800p resolution, VSync disable. FSR frame generation disabled for the time being. FSR 3 upscaler enabled using its balance preset. Low preset. Motion blur then set to nil. And that's it. There's Ratchet. Just observe the floor textures behind me. They are appearing to be flickering. FSR upscaler is causing this flicker. I just switch to XeSS upscaler. Balance preset. Now the flickering has stopped. These fine textures are not rendered properly by FSR upscaler. FPS is within a range of 40 to 50. I just enable frame generation now. On. Apply. Back to the game. FPS increased to around 70. Check out the input response. Using Ratchet's gun. Game's HUD elements are not flickering. Let's play the game. I'm going through the Rift. 55 FPS. Make sure game is installed on an SSD. You don't want to install this game on an SD card. Otherwise there will be a lot of stuttering when you go through the rifts. 55 to 70 FPS on Steam Deck. Show some combat. Taking out the creatures. This game consumes a lot of VRAM. I tested it on my ROG Ally. Ran the game at 720p resolution and low preset. VRAM usage was around 6.5 GB. Left. Rifts are getting opened up randomly. Land it safely. Another rift. 49 FPS. So performance gains were observable in all of the games that I tested using FSR frame generation. In Forbidden West, gameplay was choppy even with frame generation enabled. It's because the base FPS was on the lower side, like 20 to 30. Some input delay was present in all of the games after enabling frame generation. Nothing extreme though, games were playable using a gamepad. XeSS upscaler produced better looking images in Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart, Spiderman Remastered and Miles Morales. FSR upscaler still struggles to render fine textures properly, like the power lines, fences and grills. Hopefully AMD will work on this. Looking forward to seeing more games receiving FSR 3.1 official support in the near future. That's it for the video guys. I hope you find it useful. Thanks for watching and have a nice day.